Hello, welcome to Eden Hope Academy. We are on week 6, card number 1, and we're talking about Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. So this is going to be a little bit longer of a video, but I want you to stick with me. So there's a lot of important information here. So we're going to go back in time just a little bit and talk about Adolf Hitler. He was born in Austria. His father was a very cruel and mean person. His mom was not very supportive of him. And when he graduated from high school, or when he was old enough, he went to Vienna, Austria, because he wanted to be an artist. But he was crushed when he was not admitted into art school. And so then World War I broke out. He was very against the military, but he was drafted. So he went to work in World War I as a soldier, and he was a courier. So his job as a courier was to bring messages from one commander to another, from one trench to another, which meant that he had to run even though people were firing at him. And he says that this is the time that he lost his value of human life. So he already was a damaged person from his childhood, but then in World War I, he saw so many people killed and he was in so many dangerous situations that he lost all value for human life. Also, during World War I and before, he had a mustache and it went down to here. And most of you probably think of Adolf Hitler as having the little bitty mustache here. Well, he got hit, or a gas bomb came into a trench where he was, and he put on his gas mask, but the gas mask didn't seal around his face, and so gas got in through the gas mask, and he burned his eyes and down his throat so badly that he had to be hospitalized for a long time. And he finally regained his eyesight, but he had had just horrible pain in his eyes, and then he had blisters all down his throat, and it was extremely painful for him. And so it was after that that he shaved the sides of his mustache and just had the little thing so that he would never have a situation where a gas mask would not fit to his face again. So we know Hitler as one of the worst mass murderers in history. He didn't physically murder anyone, which people will say, but he commanded, when he was in charge of Germany, the murder of millions and millions of people. He was a very evil and vile man. But he also was a vegetarian. He also really respected and valued animals horribly. So you can see how askew his thought process was. And he also considered himself to be someone who God had called him to do things. So this was a man who would say that he was being called by the Almighty Creator, that he was a missionary to do the things that he was supposed to do. And we need to remember that he was throwing out these terms that would have hit a Christian like, you know, he's one of us. I support missionaries. But he was doing it in the most vile way that you possibly could. So at the end of World War I, he was assigned a job to talk to people returning from foreign areas and to convince them that Germany was just the best country. And his job was to be like a propaganda agent for the military. And they saw him as a great speaker, and he saw himself as a great person who could change people's ideas. And so he took those ideas and he started the Nazi Party. So what his main concerns were was Bolshevikism, Bolsheviks. So let's go back just a little bit. And just a few years before this, the people of Russia needed the Tsar to step up to the plate. The Tsar did not want to be Tsar. He was a very poor Tsar. And remember, the Tsarina was relying on someone who was just completely deceiving her, said he was a Christian, said he was doing what God wanted him to do, totally deceiving her, Rasputin. And so the people were like, look, Tsar Nicholas, we need you to lead us. And so they had what they called the March on the palace, the Winter Palace. And they came holding signs with his face on them and crosses, and none of them were armed. One had a little pocket knife, and it was pastors and women and children. And the Tsar could have looked at that and said, wow, the people are really behind me. I just need to step up my game a little bit and actually lead them. But no, that's not what he did at all, was it? He opened fire on them. He allowed them to be killed for saying that they wanted him to lead them. And so that opened the door, that sin opened the door to Bolsheviks to come in and start communism. And communism is a thought process where everyone is the same, that everyone will get the exact same thing, that everything will be fair, and that the people will run it, and they push God out completely. It's like ego, edging God out. They push God out completely, and they think that they're going to run this man-made system where everything's going to be fair. And of course, it never works out, because what happens? Human nature gets involved, and the people at the top always get the most stuff. They always get more. And the people at the bottom, most of the time they die or they're starved to death. And it's just a horrible way to govern. So Adolf Hitler at this time is watching Bolshevism take over Russia. He knows that they want to take over Germany, and he wants to fight against it. So that is a good thing. But he does so in an extremely evil way. So the way that he goes about doing this, he starts up the National Socialistic Party. Socialism is very similar to communism. Socialism also wants to push God completely out, wants to make itself God. It also wants to make everything fair for everyone instead of letting people do what God has told them to do and take care of others. It wants a government to take care of everyone. So really the same thing, just at a little bit lower level. And so that's what he's thinking that he wants. So he starts up this National Socialistic Party called the Nazis, and he gets it going, and he goes to beer halls. And I bet you're thinking, what in the world? And so what he's doing is that's where people congregate, especially men. They got together in the evenings a lot of times, and they would talk, and they would sing some songs, and then they would sometimes listen to a speaker. And so what he would do is he would go to person to person to person, and he would ask them, well, what bothers you most? And what do you like the most? And things like that. And then when it was his time to speak, he would get up, and he would repeat the words back to the people, the words that they had said. And so the people were like, oh my goodness, finally someone who totally understands me. I'm so connected with this person. And so that's how he started to gain his popularity and his power. Now, if they had thought about it, they would have realized they had just been manipulated. He had just asked them something, and he had repeated it back to them. And so that's why they thought it. They didn't look at his character. So let's go way back to last year in Sam Adams. And what did he say? He said that if a man doesn't have good character, then he's not going to lead the government well. Remember the Sam Adams rap that we learned? Sam Adams, like that? And that's what's so important, that we need to look at the character of the people that we follow. We need to look at them more deeply than just what we see on the news. We need to investigate more. But they didn't do that in Germany. So he got in trouble with the government. He got put into a very poshy jail. It was called jail, but it was really not. It was just kind of a holding house for him. It was very poshy. And he was there with his top people. So really, when you're put in jail, when people are put in jail, they're separated from their people. But instead, he was put with people like Rudolf Hess, who was a huge follower of his and became an just evil man later during World War II. So he would prance back and forth in the room, and Rudolf Hess would type out this book called Mein Kampf. And Mein Kampf means my struggle. So, oh my gosh, here we are, poor Adolf and his struggle. So already we're talking about someone who thinks about themselves, is very narcissistic, always thinking about himself, me first, that type of person. And so he calls it my struggle. And what he's doing is he's outlining what he wants to do. And so let's talk about some of the things that he does. The first thing he does is he blames Jewish people for everything. Everything that's gone wrong, World War I, everything, Weimar Republic, everything is the Jewish people's fault. And so this is one of his quotes. Now, I had to choose quotes that I didn't think were quite as impactful as others, because the ones that were impactful were so vile that I didn't think they were appropriate for children. But moms, you might want to look up quotes about Jews from Mein Kampf to get a better idea of what I'm really talking about. So it says, this is Adolf Hitler. Hence today, I believe I'm acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord. So here he is. Again, he's using what we believe as Christians to say something that's totally vile, but he's doing it in a way that's confusing. So it's confusing, he's using our words, but he's going against everything that Jesus would have us do. all in one sentence. The next one is, and so he, meaning the Jew, advances on his fatal road until another force comes forth to oppose him, and in a mighty struggle hurls a heaven stormer back to Lucifer. Germany is today the next great war aim of Bolshevikism. So he's mixing Bolshevikism with the Jewish people. And it requires all the force of a young missionary. He's calling himself a missionary. Idea to raise our people up again, to free them from the snares of this international serpent, meaning the Jewish people. So do you hear that again? He's mixing two things that don't really mix. And then he's saying that it's all the Jewish people's fault and that he's a missionary to get rid of and kill Jewish people. These are people who live next door to regular German people for generations. And they were friends. Their kids went to school together. It just, like, wow. And all of a sudden they're going against them so badly. And he's planting these seeds in the hearts of the German people. And Mein Kampf was not read that much at first, but then later on it became required for everyone to own a copy of Mein Kampf, and if you didn't, you were considered anti-state or anti-German. So the first part of Mein Kampf that I want you to remember was it was very anti-Jewish people. The next part